Displacement wasn't new for Albina, and while the destruction of Vanport might have been an act of God, other periods of displacement were acts of men. Following the war, it was almost impossible for African Americans to live outside of Albina. The Portland Realty Board required that agents only sell blacks' homes inside the district, while builders created rules forbidding black ownership in their developments.
My dad and mom found a house. We got approved through the bank and the whole thing, but the neighborhood association had this white-only rule. My mom especially was just crying and crying and crying about the fact that she really wanted that house, but they wouldn't sell it to us.
But even buying a home in Albina wasn't easy. In the 1930s, the federal government and the banking industry had divided all communities in America into 4 color-coded sections, outlining the areas they would not lend to in red. The term redlining became a catchphrase for any time banks were unwilling to lend to people and in places viewed as undesirable. And as the white population moved out and banks cut off the flow of money, properties withered and turned into what city officials would later call blight.
Cities across the country were losing population to the suburbs, and Portland was among them. You go back to the early 60s, Beaverton had 7,000 people. And you get to, the 1970s, 1980s, it was several times that.
In 1958, voters created the Portland Development Commission, an entity designed to identify and remove urban blight through revitalization projects known as urban renewal. No neighborhood was hit harder by urban renewal than Albina. In 1956, voters approved the construction of Memorial Coliseum, a project that leveled 476 homes. In 1964, another 400 residents were displaced by the construction of Interstate 5. As Portland moved deeper into the civil rights era, riots erupted in Albina in 1967 and again in 1969, following the death of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
After Dr. King was killed, along with the riot, whites stopped coming because the blacks were there, the blacks stopped coming because the whites were there. And here I'm sitting here with this business with no business, just a few customers each night.
As businesses died off, the PDC targeted Williams Avenue for yet another urban renewal project. Under the plan, the core of the neighborhood would be demolished and replaced with facilities for Emmanuel Hospital. And beginning in 1971, the city and Emmanuel condemned and demolished nearly 300 properties on 22 blocks through the powers of eminent domain.
The city would come in and place a condemned sticker on it. Within 6 months, they would have it demoed out. And it ain't where, can we negotiate this? It's you take it or leave it, because if you don't take it, we're just gonna take it.
Despite all this, in 1973, federal money for the hospital's expansion fell through, and Emmanuel's plans were put on indefinite hold.
The pharmacy was gone, dry cleaners, everything in that block. The whole block is still empty, and that was in 1970, and they tore it down.
In less than 20 years, this handful of projects had demolished over 1,100 homes in the core of Black Albina.